damaged because of his association and employment with the Obama administration. There have always been questions regarding the work he has done, especially in reference to the Iran deal which he helped author and was terrible for the American people. Now, members of Congress have found him responsible for even worse crimes, and it is all coming apart at the seams. Devin Nunes, chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, is calling for Kerry, the former Secretary of State, to be arrested for Logan Act violations, a 1799 law that to this day nobody has been arrested or charged with. This latest update came after the Boston Globe reported that Kerry was looking to save the Iran deal. For those of you who don't understand what the Logan Act really is, this is what it promulgates in reference to private correspondence with foreign governments, any citizen of the United States, wherever he may be, who, without authority of the United States, directly or indirectly commences or carries on any correspondence or intercourse with any foreign government or any officer or agent thereof, with intent to influence the measures or conduct of any foreign government or of any officer or agent thereof, in relation to any disputes or controversies with the United States, or to defeat the measures of the United States, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years, or both. This section shall not abridge the right of a citizen to apply himself, or his agent, to any foreign government, or the agents thereof, for redress of any injury which he may have sustained from such government or any of its agents or subjects. While Democrats are busy pointing the finger at Republicans and the current administration regarding the Trump-Russia Mueller investigation, it appears they have plenty of criminality of their own. What they need to do is take responsibility for it instead of pointing their fingers at Republicans. They have plenty of blame to accept for themselves, and there comes a time when enough is enough. And enough is enough. The Washington Examiner reported, meanwhile, Tom Fitton, who heads the conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch, said Kerry making quiet play to save Iran deal with foreign leaders. Report. I waiting for the left to scream treason and for Sally Yates to invoke the Logan Act and demand a criminal investigation. He was referring to former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who was concerned that former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had violated the Logan Act during the presidential transition period after he discussed policy issues with a Russian envoy. The Logan Act is a more than 200-year-old law under which no one has ever been prosecuted, that prohibits private citizens from acting on behalf of the U.S. in disputes with foreign governments. President Trump found himself beset by Logan Act talk after the Republican convention during 2016 campaign, when Trump sarcastically invited Russia to produce the 30,000-plus emails that Hillary Clinton deleted rather than turn over to investigators. The Iran deal, struck in 2015, was struck during the Obama administration and put Iran nuclear program on ice in exchange for relief from crippling sanctions. Trump, who has until May 12 to decide whether to continue on with the agreement, seek changes, or abandon it, has indicated he intends to pull out of the Iran deal, provided it is not altered, despite the protestations of European allies. Even if the Logan Act has never been used and is over 200 years old, it nonetheless is a law that people cannot break. The rules set forth in our Constitution are over 200 years old, that does and mean we all of a sudden get to stop following them. They are the foundation of our country, our values, and our principles. As such, they need to be respected for that exact reason. Democrats need to come to terms with the fact that they lost the 2016 presidential election and there is no going back. They can interfere now whether it is with the Iran deal, North Korea, Russia, or anybody or anything else for that matter. Their time is up, they had their chance, and they floundered it. Now it is time for the real professionals to come and clean up the mess.
According to a recent article by
Mr. Scott Perry of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. We certainly appreciate your indulgence. We know it's been a long time. In the context of these statements is how I'd like to ask my questions. From 1994, so not too long ago, right? We're talking about 15-year context of this deal for the most strict portions of it. So from 1994, the entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons is one statement, and also the United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments. And we all know that's, of course, quotes from President Clinton that none of that happened. I mean, North Korea is what it is, and we are where we are. In that context, Secretary Kerry, reading your quote recently with a reporter from Al Arabiya, I don't know how to interpret at this point in time, except to take it at face value, in relation to chance of death to America, death to Israel. We're going to continue our policy. And then it's very troubling, it's very disturbing, it's very troubling, and we'll have to wait and see. What will we have to wait and see, Secretary Kerry? And before you answer, 1979, 52 U.S. hostages, 444 days. 1983, the U.S. Marine barracks, 241 Americans killed. 1992, the Israeli embassy in Argentina bombed. 2011, the attempted assassination of the Saudi ambassador in D.C. The killings and maimings of hundreds in Iraq and Afghanistan, not to mention support of the Assad, Hezbollah, Hamas, and activities in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. What will we have to wait and see? What was your...
We have to see the implementation of the plan, Congressman. No, look, you and I can have a speech off if you want.
I don't want to have a speech off. I want to understand your comments.
We could have we could have a competition for who is angrier about some of the things Iran has done historically. We understand they've killed Americans. We understand what they did in Khobar Terrace. We understand all of this. But they were marching towards a nuclear weapon.
Mr. Secretary, you must understand, I appreciate this is my time, you must understand the American people see Iran as like a crocodile or a shark that does what it does. And we're saying, well, we're going to give the crocodile or the shark a few more teeth and let's see if it does something different.
That's just not accurate. That's not accurate.
But that's what we see.
We have left in
Let me say this, too. You have said that we don't have a better option. You keep on saying, well, you haven't provided a better option.
Congressman,
First of all, Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, it is not Congress's job. This is the administration. And if you would use the treaty process as provided by the Constitution, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. Furthermore, you say, well, this is the only deal we can get, that there's no better deal. Congress has a long history of instituting better deals. Example are 200 treaties, including 80 multilateral accords modified by Congress, including the Arms Control Agreement, SALT II, and the Threshold Test Ban Treaty that failed to reach a vote and were modified. So there is a history for that of getting a better deal. And if the Ayatollah doesn't like it and doesn't want to negotiate it, oh, boo-hoo. We're here for America. We stand for America. You represent America. With that having been said, it's in another interview, if you don't get a majority in Congress to support this deal, doesn't that undermine the deal? And your statement, it's abbreviated, they don't care over there. And I'm assuming you mean Iraq, as long as the deal is implemented. And that's what we care about, that this deal being implemented. So do you care more about this deal or the UN's approval or American sovereignty and the approval of the American people through their duly elected representatives, Mr. Secretary?
Congressman, I don't need any lessons from you about who I represent. I've represented and fought for our country since I was out of college.
And God bless you for your service.
Don't give me any lessons about that, okay? Now, let me just make it crystal clear to you. This is America's interest, because America is the principal guarantor of security in the region, and particularly with respect to some of our closest friends. Now, we believe that Iran was marching towards a weapon or the capacity to have a weapon, and we've rolled that back, Congress.
Okay, that's your opinion.
That's indisputable.
No, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Mr. Secretary.
That's a fact.
Is it possible that Iran will acquire Russian air defense missiles in relation to the arms embargo lifting to protect nuclear sites? Possible or not possible?
Say that again.
Is it possible that Iran will acquire Russian air defense missiles to protect nuclear sites?
Those are not in the agreement. They have A-300s.
In the relation to the arms embargo lifting?
No, they're not banned by the arms embargo. They're outside of it.
We're going to Mr. Brandon Boyle of Pennsylvania.
Security clearance attorney, political opponents of President Trump inside the federal bureaucracy have weaponized the security clearance process in order to stall the president's nominations and slow down White House operations. That attorney, Sean Bigley, joins us now. Sean, thank you so much for joining us here. I read this piece that you wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal this week, and I have to say it was one of those things where I wasn't shocked, but at the same time felt that this can't be real. It was so helpful for you to describe in detail what's going on. Tell us the specific case that you've been working on, and then we'll get to the broader lessons from it.
Absolutely. So the case is involving a gentleman named Adam Lovinger. He's a senior Defense Department official who was on loan to the White House. He was actually brought over there as a by-name request early in the administration.
What does that mean, by-name request?
They knew of his reputation, and essentially they decided that they wanted him as part of the White House policy team.
So the White House specifically said, we want this guy on our team.
They did. They reached into the bureaucracy and plucked him right out.
Right.
And unfortunately, his political views were not appreciated by those in the Pentagon in power, combined with the fact that he had actually exposed some corruption and some cronyism in contracting in a particular office in the Pentagon called the Office of Net Assessment. It's essentially the Pentagon's internal think tank. And what they're supposed to be doing is their namesake, net assessments, which are basically long-term strategy of emerging threats against the United States, things like Iran, China, cyber. And those were precisely the things that Mr. Lovinger thought they should be focusing on. Instead, what the office has become over the past few years is a slush fund for politically connected contractors to do absolutely ridiculous research reports at major expense to the taxpayer. So,
like what?
For example, there was a research report that came out on whether or not Americans are a warlike people, and that's something that the taxpayers were on the hook for, some large sum of money to produce. There was another one whether or not there was enough national security, coastal elites in the national security bureaucracy. $50 million that this office has shelled out to produce these reports.
So this guy exposed that, and then the White House wanted him, and he was blocked. When you say his political views were unacceptable, what does that mean? What political views?
Well, precisely. His political views were essentially in line with the president's and the administration's on issues like Iran, on China, on things like that I think most people would view as important things for the national security bureaucracy to focus on. Unfortunately, those were not in favor.
Okay, so this is really disturbing because you've got the bureaucracy saying that the White House can't have someone working there that agrees with the president and has done the public a service by exposing corruption and waste of money. Who is making that decision? Where's the sort of location of the problem? If we want to be really specific, not just the federal bureaucracy, is it Secretary Mattis? Who do we blame for this?
So I think it's really important that we drill down and identify precisely who these actors are, because part of the problem to date has been a lot of these folks have been able to hide in the shadows, if you will, hide behind the titles of their offices or just the bureaucracy in general. And in this case, it's a very obscure arm of the Pentagon known as the Washington Headquarters Service. It's an administrative arm, and in essence, it's where a lot of the personnel operations happen, the security clearance operations. And unfortunately, what you have there is some entrenched bureaucrats who have essentially decided to weaponize the process to keep Mr. Lovinger and others like him out of the administration.
So it sounds like Secretary Mattis needs to really take action and deal with this. Katrina, this is exactly the kind of thing you were talking about.
Well, not only that, but back in September, there was a government report talking about the number of individuals from the Obama administration that left their appointments and went into civil service. And that's been happening, you can make the argument it's happened before, but I think it's fair to say that we're in a political climate where it's not just about doing a specific job. People are now pushing political agendas or thwarting, in the case of President Trump, and that's a big part of the problem. Maybe it's time to reform civil service, hiring and firing tactics. But more importantly, this is not just happening in one agency. It's happening in almost all of the agencies where, like I said, you don't have to be a political appointee. If they just know you support Trump, you have the careers in that agency that are just causing all